Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers.
And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 16, Episode 49. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Wednesday, Steelers Nation. Dave, busy last 24 hours or so. Bunch of Steelers roster moves, including one that was made just moments before you and I hopped on Wednesday morning. Mike Tomlin's press conference, injury roundup, a look back at the All-22 from the Chargers game, and a look ahead to Week 11 against the Cincinnati Bengals. Dave, how you doing?
All right. Happy Wednesday. It's Bengals week. Always exciting time, and what a big game for both of these teams if you think about it, because the Bengals are trying to still hang around, and there's word about Joe Burrow window opening, and he's looking to play later on this season. So the Steelers could probably do themselves a huge favor by winning, obviously, on as far as must-win game goes. I mean, obviously, it's not you got absolutely must win it, but it's probably one you probably would like to win, especially the way that things go, especially if they want to maintain their lead in the AFC North division. But talk about windows opening and talk about visitor coming to town everybody was excited about that ultimately signed. We do have a lot of news to talk about, sort of a Wednesday housekeeping, if you will.
Yeah, we are busy today, Dave. So speaking of which, from an IR standpoint, Pittsburgh will not see Burrow this weekend, but he is going to be back at practice to try to return later this month. For quarterbacks, though, in Pittsburgh's world, Will Howard officially back on the 53-man roster. Pittsburgh activating him today on his 21st day and final day to be activated. Otherwise, he would have had to spend the rest of the season on IR, unable to practice. And so this was expected whenever Howard was activated late last month. I assume they would use all 21 days to maximize the time and flexibility with their roster, which is the case. In a corresponding move, the team released and waived running back Trey Sermon, who was signed to the 53-man roster last week ahead of the Chargers game, has played only on special teams in parts of 4 appearances this season with Pittsburgh. So that's not necessarily the headline roster move to talk about, but it is notable, and Howard officially all the way back.
Yeah, and I would imagine he'll start serving as the emergency number 3 quarterback here starting on Sunday against the Bengals. And with Trey Sermon now, you would obviously we'll see what happens around the league or whatnot. He's got to clear waivers and all, but probably a decent chance that he winds up back on the practice squad. Mike Tomlin seems to like him, especially from a special team standpoint. Obviously hasn't, I don't think he's carried or had any offensive touches. If he has, it's been few and far between in the limited time that he's been elevated for games and all like that. But we'll have to see, A, if he clears waivers, and B, if he ends up on the practice squad. But Will Howard is back on the 53 now, so he can continue to practice with the team.
A lot of other secondary moves to talk about. We'll talk about Asante Samuel Jr. in a second. That was officially announced today alongside the Howard Sermon moves. But let's begin elsewhere, Dave. Pittsburgh releasing and waiving veteran safety Juan Thornhill earlier this week. Mike Tomlin commenting on that Tuesday, simply saying his play was not up to snuff. And also, Pittsburgh had the opportunity to reunite with a former rookie, and Sebastian Castro was poached off Pittsburgh's practice squad in late September by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He appeared in one game for the Bucs, was waived this weekend. Pittsburgh claimed him back to be on the 53-man roster after previously being on Pittsburgh's practice squad. I thought Castro impressed this summer and has some real special teams value down the road, and obviously could get a chance to dress and play and make his Steelers debut as early as this weekend. So Thornhill out and Castro in.
Yeah, interesting to hear Mike Tomlin actually comment on Thornhill and deliver the line not up to snuff. That's kind of a little bit out of characteristic for Mike Tomlin here. And we just mentioned Castro the other day, right? Talking about the Buccaneers waiving him and how the potential of him. Even the moment that he got snatched off the practice squad, you kind of wondered how long he'd stay up on past the 3 weeks on the Buccaneers 53-man roster. And once they waived him, I think they waived him on Saturday, so he wasn't eligible because of Sunday being an off business day. He wasn't able to hit waivers until Monday, and the Steelers snatched him right back. And Mike Tomlin had a few positive things to say about him. We'll hit in a little bit here, talking about the Mike Tomlin press conference and all. But yeah, good to have a guy back, a guy that you like, a guy that you thought maybe could have potential, specifically on special teams. And he's back, and we out goes Juan Thornhill, and he has since cleared waivers and is a free agent.
Tomlin said that the move was more about Castro than Thornhill, but also said the play wasn't up to snuff. So I think there's certainly a mixture of both there. Thornhill had not played a single defensive snap the last 2 weeks after Jalen Ramsey moved back to free safety, and even after Ramsey temporarily moved to cornerback against the Chargers once Joey Porter went down and Darius Slay was already out. Chuck Clark came in to replace Thornhill, which kind of felt like the writing was on the wall at that point for Juan Thornhill.
Yeah, he since the game against the Packers, Thornhill has only played on special teams. So yeah, the writing was clearly on the wall that he was on the outs.
All right, Dave, let's talk about the most notable headline name added to Pittsburgh's roster, albeit one currently on the practice squad. That is Asante Samuel Jr. I think we mentioned him late last week. He had a slew of visits before Pittsburgh. He saved the best for last, evidently. I think he came in a day earlier than reported. Reportedly was going to come in Wednesday for his visit or tryout. This happened on Tuesday, according to the NFL transaction sheet, although officially announced today by the team. So Samuel played in only 4 games last year, had a spinal fusion surgery in the offseason. A lot of questions about his health and where he was at medically, but 26 years old, a talented starting corner for Pittsburgh. To get this guy midseason may take some time for him to get conditioning and get an understanding of the scheme and playbook, obviously, but maybe an asset for a late season playoff push. Pretty happy about this.
Yeah, he visited with the 49ers, I think, on Monday. I think the initial layout or report was that he was going to visit the Bears. I think it was on Tuesday, but obviously, I think something maybe didn't come to fruition there because he was reported as a tryout guy, along with C.J. Henderson, another tryout. Obviously had spent time with the Steelers on the practice squad previously. Both those two corners were brought in for tryouts on Tuesday, and then the word surfaced late yesterday evening that Samuel would be signing to the practice squad, and that obviously became official today. So, and then, a note that we've talked about several times and reconfirmed by Ian Rappaport this morning, the spinal fusion surgery that Asante Samuel Jr. had performed, I think it was back in April, was done by Dr. David Okonkwo, who is the Steelers team neurosurgeon. So the Steelers obviously had firsthand knowledge on that, and I think since then, I think Asante's been posting videos here and there on Instagram and stuff like that about his recovery and all. Obviously hasn't played in a game since I think it was week 4 of the 2024 season. There might be a little bit of a conditioning aspect that you have to get across or get over with him. We'll see whether or not he's able to at least get up to speed enough to be in uniform on Sunday against the Bengals. We're obviously watching Darius Slay, who's in concussion protocol right now, to see if he can make it back. I guess where we need to go from here is, what are the Steelers getting in Asante Samuel at this point, and with him coming off of this injury?
Our Josh Carney has a good film room breakdown of Samuel for you guys to check out. It's stickied on the website essentially a guy with good ball skills, still somebody who's athletic, who's been productive. There's some questions about a little bit on technique, but primarily on tackling. He's got a high missed tackle rate. And so that's going to be the thing to watch, especially off this surgery. Is he going to be a reliable and confident and technically sound tackler? That's going to be the concern. But the ball skills are there. The playmaking is certainly there. And so Pittsburgh is looking to infuse some of that into its secondary.
Turnover culture edition, right? This is a guy that's known to be able to take the football away. You remember back a couple of years ago in the playoffs, I think it was, against Jacksonville, had 3 interceptions in one game. Was a real notable aspect of his career, a real smart, if you look at the tape and some of the highlights and all associated with him, a real heady, I view as a very smart player, specifically in zone instances, has a real good, especially in cover 2. He makes some fantastic reads in cover 2 situations and even in goal line work with old Banjo passing off some of those guys down low when they exchange and all like that. I think he's got some good tape as far as that. Good ball skills, as you mentioned, able to take the football away. Once again, I think he has more benefit in more zone versus man. Obviously, has played in both, is an outside guy predominantly. And then obviously the issues with the tackling is the biggest one of the bigger concerns. And look, here's the thing. Spinal fusion, that's no joke of a surgery, right? Especially when you read up on what that really is. I don't know if maybe we can get Dr. Mel to maybe do the Doctor is in article on him and what that is. There obviously is that kind of risk involved. That's a very minor evasive surgery, I think, but obviously for a contact sport and using the head and neck area, one you do have to worry about. Then obviously the whole conditioning aspect. What kind of player are you getting post this injury here? But the Steelers obviously have a pulse on him with their neurosurgeon being responsible for doing the work on him, and low risk. I would imagine with him, it was salary being a practice squad, probably a minimum player, and you're hoping to maybe get this guy up to speed quickly on the field, and the big boom versus the bust aspect, I would think, would be the ability to break up some passes and maybe get you a takeaway or two going forward here. And more than anything, providing you some depth. We wondered about Kyle Duggar, right? When he came in, how quickly can they get him up to speed and how many snaps can he potentially play? Well, Duggar came out of shoot, played all but one snap in that first game. I would be surprised if we saw Asante Samuel Jr. play that many snaps. I mean, first and foremost, you just got to try to get him on the field and in uniform. And once again, maybe that's going to be tied to Darius Slay and concussion protocol this week.
Well, I think, as you pointed out, the conditioning's a big difference. Duggar had gone through the entire season. He'd been playing, he'd been practicing, and Samuel hasn't played a down or a snap of practice since last September. And so just from that standpoint, it may take some time for his legs to get under him, for the team to evaluate him, for him to get comfortable, knock some of the rust off. I'd be pretty surprised if he was an asset this week or even maybe anytime super soon. I think Slay's probably back from his concussion by the time Samuel starts moving in that direction. But can you get this guy ready for Baltimore week 14 or something like that is kind of what's in my head right now. And if he can get ready sooner, then more power to him and more power to this team. But cornerback depth was really needed just generally because Jalen Ramsey is basically now a permanent free safety. Mike Tomlin's saying he's going to play free safety against the Bengals. If you're playing safety against Chase and company, then you're playing safety full time. If there was a time for Ramsey to kind of move around and shift a little bit, it'd be against the Bengals. And so that's one factor. And then Darius Slay with a concussion, although he will probably miss no more than one game, though we'll see. Concussions can be fickle, and we just don't know exactly where he's going to end up being in the protocol. And then, of course, Corey Trice Jr. on IR. His window closes 1 week from today. Hurt his knee, his second practice back. does not appear he'll be in the equation for the stretch run. So you start thinning out at cornerback. You have James Pierre, Brendan Eccles, a slot guy, although he can play inside, outside, and then Slay and Porter whenever Slay is healthy and cleared. So that was important just from a depth standpoint, but then you're getting somebody that can be hopefully more than just depth. And it's been a quality starting corner, 2 interceptions in each of his first 3 years until only playing in those 4 games last season. Somebody that, as you said, has the ball skills, to takeaway culture that Pittsburgh is looking for. And if it doesn't work out, you've really risked nothing at all here for a practice squatter.
Right. And when it comes to Corey Trice Jr., obviously we already have the negative of that knee issue showing up since he had his window open to resume practicing and all. Today's the first injury report of week 11. If Corey Trice is on that thing as not practicing because of that knee/hamstring, it's yeah, you got to think that he's not going to get activated to the 53.
Right. My assumption is, until being told or having any evidence otherwise, is that Trice's window will simply close on IR in a week from now, and will spend the rest of the season on injured reserve, ineligible to return after that 21-day window closes. We'll take a last look at the injury report today and throughout this week, but I'm not expecting Trice to come back in any capacity. I don't know what the knee injury he suffered was, but he has not practiced since the injury, and so I assume that'll remain so for the next week.
Yep.
Should note, in a corresponding move to get Samuel on the practice squad, Pittsburgh released veteran safety Derek Forrest, who spent about 2 weeks on the practice squad, did not appear in a game, was not elevated by the team, and they're getting a healthier at safety with Chuck Clark's return, Ramsey being moved, and we'll see if Jabril Peppers comes back from his quad injury as well, and of course Castro now in the fold.
Right. So the thing I guess we'll watch between now and the next couple of days is if Sermon clears waivers and if he goes back to the practice squad.
And the practice squad is full now, I believe, right? There's no open spot on the practice squad, so for Sermon to come back, somebody else would have to go.
Agreed.
All right, that'll be some housekeeping for Friday if that ends up being the situation. All right, Dave, let's look at the injury and health situation of the team broadly. Mike Tomlin speaking on it during his Tuesday press conference, and overall some positive news, although names to watch here. Cole Holcomb is going to get back to practice after missing 2 weeks with some sort of unknown illness that must have been pretty severe for him to miss 2 full weeks of action. Slay in protocol, as Tomlin said. Jabril Peppers will be limited and was running in a limited capacity per Tomlin late last week, although he was ruled out by Friday before the Chargers game, but he's going to start working his way back. Tomlin optimistic, Isaac Seumalo can return after missing last week with his pec injury, and Scotty Miller officially cleared the practice after breaking his finger and missing the last 2 games. And of course, Will Howard just officially all the way back today. So still no guarantee that Holcomb, Slay, Peppers, Seumalo play, but all moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and you would think I don't know how much you want to read into the Juan Thornhill move, but probably letting him go and obviously getting Castro back, and with Ramsey moving to safety, Peppers, it sounds positive with him with the quad, but you're still let's see, your 53-man roster right now. We'll have to see if any elevations happen come Saturday, but you still need guys on that inactive list, and I Seumalo will be one to watch right out of the chute. Obviously, Peppers will be one to watch out right out of the chute, and Holcomb as he comes back from whatever illness he had. I wonder if he had mono or something like that. It's hard to say for sure. Mike Tomlin has not definitively said what that illness is, but definitely some names to watch, and I think some bumps and bruises. We'll probably see some rest, non-injury related veterans at some point Wednesday or Thursday.
Wasn't Holcomb just honored yesterday for the Ed Block Courage Award? He was at that ceremony, right? I didn't really look at the article. So he's healthy enough to be around people, which is good. So I don't know, again, what the illness was. Who knows? It could be a variety of things, obviously, but glad he's going to get back in the right direction. So we'll get the injury report out Wednesday, obviously recording that before it comes out later today, but should be some positive news. Tomlin also said could be some bumps and bruises. You had Porter step out of the game. Highsmith's had an ankle injury. Guys get rest. But overall, I think by Friday's show, we'll be pretty positive about how this team is looking health-wise.
Right. And then obviously we'll look to Saturday to see what elevations happen.
All right, what else from Mike Tomlin's press conference, Dave? That was certainly how he starts things off with the injury and health situation, but what else stuck out to you from his presser? Pretty long press conference.
Yeah, not one of the longest ones, but fairly long just the same. I think he even spent like 15 minutes or so, 14 and a half minutes just with the opening and all when talking about the last game against the Chargers and starting to preview and make the Cincinnati Bengals look like world champions. A lot of different ways we can go with this. Do you want to talk about what he had to say about MVS is one of the things we just talked about, possible elevations, and we've talked a little bit about Valdes-Scantling, about possibility of maybe getting him up and running. Why don't we start by talking about what he said about MVS?
Sure. He's open to elevating him later this week or at some point this season. He says, quote, "I'm certainly open to evaluate Scantling and his ability to know what to do and the quality of that execution and how it might fit into what we're trying to do offensively in an effort to engineer a victory." A lot of coach speak there, but point being that, elevations are common. Tomlin said they've done it every single week this season. So we'll see if this is going to be MVS's week after a week in which Pittsburgh's receiver core and the offense was below par.
Right. And I guess to kind of tag on to that, why don't we talk about the punt return situation and Keyshawn Williams and potentially Calvin Austin and, Mike Tomlin, in a word, kind of letting it known that he's still probably not gotten over Keyshawn Williams muffing that punt.
Yeah, Williams may not be the punt returner this week. Tomlin leaving that door open to a change that'll be evaluated. Said the focus was since Calvin Austin began the year as the punt returner and then injured his shoulder, which opened the door for Williams to play. Whenever Austin came back off the shoulder injury, Tomlin said they wanted the focus to be on just playing receiver for Austin. That kept Williams as the punt returner, who had done a nice job in punts and on kick returns as well. Now, after muffing that punt late in the Chargers game, even though the game was essentially over, it's the principle of the matter. And so Tomlin not committing to Williams being the punt returner for this game. I assume if not, then Austin will go back into that role. I was wondering, one mistake, it was a mistake, no question about that. Would that cost Williams his job? I thought maybe not, give a guy a second chance, but you saw Caleb Johnson get pulled after his kickoff gaffe, which granted was a more headline-y play and more weird play that kind of required the punishment, but maybe, be consistent. Rookie makes a mistake, Caleb Johnson, he's gone. Williams makes a mistake, maybe he comes off that unit as well.
If you have any elevations, and specifically if MVS gets elevated on Saturday, you could see Keyshawn probably be inactive, and especially if Scotty Miller makes it all the way back from the finger. So something to look at. It just felt like the tone that Keyshawn might have to sit this one out.
Yeah, wouldn't be shocking. So we'll have to see whenever inactives come in. We may not know, but if all this Scantling gets elevated, then yeah, that's another 53-man roster guy that has to be inactive, and it may be Keyshawn Williams.
Positive things about Castro coming back. He was available to us, went through the team development process with Castro. We thought he had a good camp, a good preseason. He played his tail off in that practice against the Buccaneers. I think that's why they stole him from us. We had an opportunity to reacquire him. We've absorbed some attrition since he left, so it was an opportunity to get him back. It's more about Castro and less about Juan, even though he did say Juan was not up to snuff.
Yeah, I could see Castro as a future Killebrew, which is all the more notable now that Killebrew has that, I assume, torn ACL out for the season and a free agent after this year. Castro was working as an up-back, multi-phase special teamer, not the biggest guy, not the fastest guy, but played well. I thought he picked up his play throughout training camp, got better down the stretch, and was second on the team in special team snaps in the preseason behind Carson Bruner. So I could see maybe a future Killebrew and Sebastian Castro.
Let's hope so. That would be a nice consolation when it comes to undrafted free agents class from this past year.
Dave, my biggest question for this press conference was his commentary, Tomlin's thoughts on Jalen Ramsey, and would he stay at safety? And if so, how does the plan for defending Jamar Chase and T. Higgins change, especially after Chase torched Ramsey included, but the Pittsburgh Steelers secondary in that Week 7 game. And Tomlin essentially confirming that Ramsey will stay at safety. No big changes on the horizon there. But the plan for Jamar Chase remains in development. He says, quote, Jalen's not the issue. He's got flexibility. It's about the flexibility of those around him and the talents of those around him. But certainly over the last 2 weeks, just his presence consistently at free safety has been a stabilizing force on the back end. I'd imagine that's not going to change, end quote. And so perfectly fine and reasonable to keep Ramsey at free safety. But then how do you cover Chase and company? That's the big question.
I'm so appreciative of you asking Mike Tomlin that question, Alex. Props to you.
Yeah, I tweeted out about that. I wonder if somebody would ask Tomlin about that question, and somebody did. But I think it's a question that a lot of people shared. I think it's an interesting question because, again, you brought in Jalen Ramsey basically to cover guys like Jamar Chase, basically to take on the Bengals. No coincidence Pittsburgh makes that blockbuster move in June in an offseason in which Chase and Higgins get long-term extensions to remain in Cincinnati for the foreseeable future. And now Ramsey can still cover receivers in moments in time. He did that against Tyler Warren and did that against Chargers receivers, but obviously will not be a full-time corner really at all in this game. And so with Slay out, you're left to have Eccles and Porter and Pierre. And Slay could play if he gets cleared, obviously, but kind of assume that he's out until he's in. And so how do you handle that after getting torched is a big question.
Yeah, indeed. And look, this is you can't help but think back to the couple of weeks ago when the Steelers played the Bengals and the things that they did with them, especially out of bunches. And the guy, I mean, heck, how many targets did Chase have in that game?
23, I think, 16
Yeah.
catches, which were a franchise record.
And probably could have had a few more in that game as well too. So you definitely need to change some things up and do some things different. But on the flip side, I think the Bengals would be foolish not to try to see how many of those things are fixed because of the success that they had. So obviously got a different safety duo in there than you did a couple of weeks ago against the Bengals, and Joe Flacco obviously a lot more comfortable in that offense than he was, and the Steelers' run defense did not play well at all against Chase Brown and company. So it's time to correct a lot of those errors that we saw against the Bengals the first time around.
And Pittsburgh will be tested. I tried to find this stat last night, but StatHead was down. Jamar Chase is on pace for 202 targets this season. He's got 107 targets this year. Is that going to be the record for most targets by a player in a season? I'm going to try to look that up now because I wasn't able to research it last night. But obviously, point is they are going to pepper him with targets, and he has been peppered, not just in that Steelers game, but in the last several games, maybe a little less so in this most recent game the Bengals played before their bye week. But Chase early, often, not even just because of his success in any game. Chase is going to be a focal point of the pass game, but certainly I think that the Bengals will see if Pittsburgh has a better plan this time around.
Absolutely, and that's the way I would address it if I'm the Bengals too. And if they can't run it through Chase, if the Steelers try to clamp down Chase or do a better, not try. I mean, obviously they probably tried in that first game and failed miserably. But you've got to make that ball go to T. Higgins or Josephus in this game this time. In addition to doing a much better job against Chase Brown in the ground game.
Right. Only 5 players in NFL history have 200 targets in a season. It is Julio Jones in 2015 with 203. Megatron, Calvin Johnson had 204 in 2012. Marvin Harrison had 205 in 2002. Herman Moore in 1995 with Detroit, 206. And your record holder, Rob Moore, the Arizona Cardinals in 1997, 209 targets, only 97 catches that year. So that is the mark. Chase, again, on pace for 202. And if he replicates his performance against the Steelers that he did in Week 7, he could be on pace for even more targets.
All right.
Good so that's
good stat of the weird there.
It's a fun stat of the weird here on a Wednesday. So that's my big thought. And granted, with Ramsey again, you can still do some man coverage stuff with him. He was still spinning down and covering receivers. It's kind of interesting because in that sense, when you're a nickel, you basically have 4 corners out there because Ramsey can cover like a corner. You kind of do some different things with him you couldn't normally do with traditional safeties who may not have that super strong, man coverage cornerback background that Ramsey does. So I think it's kind of interesting with the flexibility that Pittsburgh can employ, but it won't give you the ability to kind of shadow and put Ramsey on Chase the way that was probably Pittsburgh's vision when they acquired him.
Agreed.
I thought one of the more interesting comments from Tomlin that's gained a lot more attention is on Jaylen Warren and his role in carries and maybe in some perception lack thereof. 14 carries in this game, was outsnapped by Kenneth Gainwell 27-24. Tomlin generally downplayed the concern, said that more third down conversions will naturally create more opportunities for Warren. And so it was not closing the door on giving Warren more touches, but not really looking to expand his role and just saying if other guys do their job, if Pittsburgh can stay on schedule, extend drives, then naturally Warren will touch the football more. He said at one point that Warren simply cannot play on every single down. You have to give this guy a breather sometimes. And so those comments have gotten a lot of play, at least locally.
Yeah, what did he have? 16 total touches in the game, the 14 runs, the 2 targets, the 2 pass receptions in that game. And look, when you start dissecting this thing down, it's not an excuse whatsoever. But I mean, once again, this offense only ran 50 plays, 10 of which came when they were down, 22-3? After the Chargers kicked their next to last field goal that made it 22-3, right there at the start of the fourth quarter, the Steelers ran 10 plays after that. How many touches are you actually, even though he did get a couple of touches, I think after that, how many are you really going to get him at that point there? So if you boil this down to 40 snaps and then you take away another at least 9 of those on third down situations that the Steelers had earlier in the game, and I don't know if we have how many he was on the field for, Jaylen was on the field for at that point. I think maybe a couple at that point. You start dissecting this thing down, and I came away after that kind of autopsy, if you will, said, man, they probably did a good job to get him 16 touches in that game.
Yeah, I'm not as upset about some of the big picture numbers as others, and it should be pointed out while the stat is Gainwell outsnapped Warren, Gainwell played on every single snap on that final drive, and Gainwell was working as your third down pass back in this game. The game was over. I'm okay with Gainwell finishing that out. Warren had taken a beating in that game, had run really hard in his usual self, and so I think it's fine to put Gainwell in there. And so Warren was outsnapping Gainwell when the game was competitive before that last drive, and so that context should be talked about. My complaint would be a more narrow one that I tweeted out, and this is from our Tom Mead charting, which is great work, but easy work because Tom's flying through the charting this year with these slow snap counts. Jaylen Warren did not play on
jealous much?
I'm very jealous. I'm very salty about this, and I've let Tom know about it. Jaylen Warren did not play on a single third down against the Chargers. Pittsburgh, of course, started that game 0 of 9 on third down, finished it with 2 meaningless conversions in the grand scope of trying to win the game to finish 2 of 11. And so you had a 3rd and 2, you had a 3rd and 4. For a guy that was clearly your best offensive player in this game, for a guy that is a good pass protector, a really good receiver, somebody Rodgers trusts a lot and is on record saying, I played my game differently because I can check it down to Warren knowing he can make a play and I'll let him have that opportunity. That, I think, is something Pittsburgh has to examine and say, yes, Gainwell was brought in for his receiving ability and has made some plays there occasionally, but can we get Warren some more third down work when we were 0 of 9 on third down and struggling to extend drives to get Warren the ball more often, right, according to Mike Tomlin?
So the pushback should probably be of those first, let's say, 9 third downs. Couldn't you have gotten Jaylen Warren out there for at least 4 or 5 of them?
That's reasonable. I don't know exactly how many he should, quote unquote, should be out there. I'm sure the plan was for Gainwell to be the third down back in this game, and he got those reps in practice and those kinds of things. But you had the 1 3rd and 2. It was after the Warren hurdle. There was a timeout called. I think Pittsburgh had called timeout. You got to get Warren back on the field for that moment. Rodgers was sacked on the play. Pittsburgh had the punt. Chargers got a field goal off of that. I know he just carried the ball 3 times in a row, but you had a timeout, got a breather. It's a got to have a tight moment and a pretty weighty situation in the second half of Pittsburgh to try to climb back into this game. So I think it's more nitpicky, a little more forgivable, but the focus has to be getting your playmakers the football, getting them on the field, and I don't think Pittsburgh quite hit that mark.
All right, I agree there. That's where the pushback should be. Alex, you have been really since the first few weeks of the season, you've been talking a lot about the amount of plays or lack of plays run on offense, and that's become it has become a weekly discussion, and something that you track and something that you put out on Twitter. Mike Tomlin was asked, you mentioned this at the beginning, the play disparity or average like 14, in other words, between offense and defense, a disparity of like 14 or 15 plays per game. Is that concerning to you? How do you change that? Mike Tomlin kind of danced around that. He says, on some level it is, on some level it isn't. Sometimes it can get out of whack because you're taking the ball away, for example, and if you're taking the ball away a bunch like we did a couple of weeks back, you're giving the offense the short fields. It can alter your time of possession, or like our last outing, if you're not converting on third downs, it can be a negative thing. And if so, I am largely not over concerned with that in general, but how we are coming to that is a bigger discussion for me. So yeah, how, and part of that obviously is not converting these third downs, key possession down plays. This offense obviously has been struggling on third downs and not possessing the football, and especially when your possessions, when you're not getting the takeaways on short fields, as was the case against the Chargers. That's a obvious look. There's nothing against. I have no problem with offense having short fields and only running 3 plays and putting it into the end zone. But you didn't, in games that you're not getting that aspect of the turnover culture, or turnovers and turnover culture playing a part in it. It is a concern about the offense and not being able to stay on the field, and specifically in gotta have it moments on third and fourth downs.
And Pittsburgh is not getting those explosive plays. So one of the worst teams in the NFL in explosive plays, as we talked about on the Monday show. So it's not like Pittsburgh has a good excuse for not having a lot of snaps. And it may be the symptom of the larger problem, but it's still the point all the same. Pittsburgh is averaging 55 offensive snaps per game. That is, if that number holds true, and it's been very consistent throughout the season, that would be the third lowest mark of any NFL team since 2003, which is a totally abysmal mark. And I get Tomlin's point, what he was trying to say about the takeaways that create short fields, but you know what generally hurts time of possession and snap counts? When you turn the ball over 5 or 6 times, and yet New England and Indianapolis still had 65, 70 plays in those moments. You're not supposed to have all those plays when you're giving the ball away at such a high rate. And yeah, maybe they had the one, muff punt that gave Pittsburgh a short field, so you're not going to naturally get a lot of plays off of that. But overall, you got to be running more than 55 plays per game. Pittsburgh has only run more than 60 plays per game once this season. You're just not possessing the football, and that's indicative of a third down offense. It's 26 in the NFL, a group that turned the ball over too much against the Chargers. Obviously, it's just hard to win when you're just having such a small menu of plays, so few opportunities. Pittsburgh has been outsnapped in every single game this season. They lost time of possession battle in all but one game this season. The Chargers had the ball for 37 plus minutes in this game. None of this is conducive to offensive success.
Right. And then let's not forget the safety either. Not only is that a negative play on offense, but it gives the ball right back. They got points off of it, and they get the ball right back off of the free kick on top of it.
But even in games where Pittsburgh has played clean and has not turned the football over, they've not possessed the football. And I struggled to have an explanation for why the third down offense has not been great this year. It's really regressed the last 2 games. It was kind of middling before these last two contests. So I'm not. It's hard to explain every reason why the snap count is so low, but the fact of the matter is the snap count is very low. Last in the NFL, Pittsburgh's defense has the most number of snaps this season, and so you combine those 2 things, and it's hard to have a sustainable model of success.
Well, when you autopsy this offense through this point of the season right now, We have talked about this a few times. Negativity really, look, negativity impacts, can impact every offense around the league at some point, some more than others. But the Steelers just don't handle negativity on early downs, whether it be a sack, whether it be a penalty. I mean, heck, you open up the dadgum game against the Chargers with a false start by a guy playing his first snap in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform and a grizzled veteran at that. So you start 1st and 15. This offense just is not good enough to overcome negativity. So that's the starting point there. Second, even when they don't have negativity, they're not performing well on 3rd down. So that's another aspect of this, and they're going to have to try their best to solve it. And generally, you just don't see these things take magical turns around mid-season and beyond. The running game, say what you will, there have been some bright spots. We've seen a couple of weeks ago that start making strides going the other directions, but other direction. But as a whole, for the pedigree, for the outlook, for the things that we kind of expected with the veteran quarterback getting you in and out of RPOs and plays of that nature, this running game just hasn't met expectations to this point of the season, especially when you've had for the bulk of it up until recently with Sayamalo. I mean, you've had the luxury of having these same 5 guys in here predominantly for a bulk of the plays here. But even so, the run game, you're not getting those 10 plus yard runs. You're just not staying on schedule enough with the run overall. You throw on top of that here that this offense has struggled to create explosive plays of either 10 yards or more on the ground or 20 or more yards through the passing game. And then the opportunities that we saw, the few and far between against the Chargers, where they were there to be had, you're not making them. And in a game like that against a good team, against a good defense like the Chargers, if you're not hitting those plays, they are very, very, and your defense is not putting your offense on short fields. You combine that with with the inconsistent running game and the problems this offense has had is on 3rd downs. It's just a recipe for disaster. And I just don't know how you turn that around when it comes to the running game getting on. But you start with the running game. You got to start with the running game. It's got to be better because Aaron Rodgers becomes a better quarterback when this offense is on schedule and you're in 2nd and short or third and short situations. And
but aren't they doing that? Like Warren averaged 5 yards a carry. They didn't get the big play, but they were largely on schedule against the Chargers, I felt like.
Yeah, but I mean, you still in when we rolled down to 3rd downs though overall, and there were a couple that you've got to be converting those 3rd and 4s and 3rd and 5s, and they weren't. But
right, they were in some manageable situations.
Right. But once again, it's the whole big. It's not just one piece of this on top of. But when you're taking your shots down the field and you're not hitting them, that hurts bad. And then you add on to it the inconsistency in the running game overall. It hurts.
Yeah, it does. I don't know if it's a little chicken or egg. I don't know if the run game needs to be better, if other things need to be better so the run game can continue to thrive. I mean, I think the run game has generally kind of been on an upward trend. The Colts game aside, they didn't have a lot of success against that pretty tough Colts run of Buckner and Stewart. But, I mean, again, I'm a little at a loss of why the snap count is so bad because I don't see any giant glaring issue of why it wouldn't be. The run game has been okay. Rodgers getting the ball out pretty quick. It's been some takeaways. It's been some turnovers, I should say. The lack of the explosive play, the lack of the deep ball are probably all some factors that go into this thing. But it's a little surprising, a little alarming because you look at that and say this is an offense that should be having the ball more than just 55 snaps a game.
I think it's a lot alarming. Look, I didn't think this was going to be a juggernaut offense by any stretch of the imagination, but I thought it would be better than it has been.
Well, it's been around top 10 until this Chargers stud, and now they're 16th. If they can get back to being in that 10 to 12 range, that was kind of my expectation for where this unit would be. But I was hoping for more of those explosive downfield plays because you've really just gotten very few of them, less than even recent seasons where it's been pretty poor. And a lot of the offseason focus was on adding playmaking. And of course, you had Aaron Rodgers as a better facilitator, and that just not really transpired.
And I thought there'd be more 10-yard runs too, and there just hasn't. I mean, just explosive plays in total. And when you look at it once again at just 10-yard runs and 20-yard pass plays, I think only the Tennessee Titans have fewer.
Right, and just I think Pittsburgh is 29th in rush attempts, which is very atypical of an Arthur Smith-led team. I want to see the year that he had Matt Ryan, where they finished in rush attempts. They were actually 29th that year in rush attempts. So the quarterback situation is a factor when you don't have a mobile quarterback, and some of those design quarterback runs and even some of the scrambles end up counting as rush attempts. You naturally kind of lean lower on the list, but Arthur Smith is a run-first oriented coordinator, and Pittsburgh's not been able to run the ball as frequently as they would like. And of course, when you're only running 55 snaps per game, you naturally just have fewer plays than most other teams to run and kind of add to your totals to.
All right, let's switch gears and talk about the jumbo package and how it was utilized with Sayamalo out and the quirk within that with Spencer Anderson and the eligible situation with him and how that impacted things.
Yeah, there's an interesting rule that maybe others clearly knew it. I was not aware of the rule until this week, but Pittsburgh still used Spencer Anderson as that sixth offensive lineman on the end of the line of scrimmage, and that put Andres Pete at left guard. So Anderson, who started at left guard for Sayamalo, would have to go over, report eligible to the referee to be that sixth offensive lineman, Pete in at left guard. For the next play, provided Anderson was not staying eligible and they were kind of back to a normal formation, Anderson had to sit out. And so Pete had to play the ensuing snap after. And then Anderson could go back in. So the rule is if you're a player that goes from like an offensive line spot to reporting eligible, you have to sit out one snap after that unless there's an injury timeout or replay review. There's a couple different other factors. There's got to be some sort of kind of stoppage in play for you to go back into offensive line. So it would go Anderson report eligible with Pete at left guard, then Anderson off the field with Pete at left guard, and then Anderson on the field at left guard. Pete comes off as kind of the sequence of events, which is an interesting quirk and speaks to even more kind of the question, was it worth it to do this plan? Because that would require Anderson to come off an additional snap, but that was the plan for this game.
Now, remember a couple of weeks ago when we were wondering about Sayamalo and all like that, I said I was interested in potentially seeing uh, Anderson at left guard and Pete potentially being the extra lineman. Look, he's been around the league. He's played guard and tackle. Why do you think that they're so married to? Is it just because of the repetition and the success that they had and the reps in practice and all? Why would you maybe go down the road? Because look, if you get ahead of steam and you're having success with the extra lineman out there, you probably want to try to go back to the well a couple of times. Remember several years ago with Todd Haley and the gap schemes of the Napoleon de Castro again. Mm-hmm. You know, when something works, you generally want to go back to it. Why should or couldn't they maybe explore Pete being the eligible guy when Sayamalo is out?
Well, just to be clear, if I'm interpreting your comment correctly, Anderson can stay in as an eligible player for multiple plays. He doesn't have to come out after reporting eligible that first time. But to then go back to play left guard, he has to sit out a snap, or there has to be some sort of stoppage in play. And so he could report eligible 4 times in a row and not have to come off the field. I mean, obviously, to what you said, it worked. They like the package. It has been successful this season, and Anderson is a better athlete than Pete. And that's probably the calculation to do some of those things on escort swings and some of the toss game they like to do. They probably didn't trust Pete to be as fleet of foot in space, and that's why they wanted to make that move and kind of sacrifice that extra snap with Anderson out there wide.
And I'm looking at it more of a continuity thing as well, too. That way you're not shuffling in and out a different left guard.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I wasn't crazy about the idea at first for that continuity aspect. I guess Pittsburgh would say it's only a snap. You know, Pete's been here since the summer. It's not like we're rotating every other series. It's kind of a just this happens a handful of times. I think it happened maybe 4 times in this game. So I guess I get their point. It's not my biggest gripe, but it was interesting, and I did learn more about the NFL rulebook.
Yeah, I'm not saying this is some sort of grand fix here. I'm just wondering if that
I
could
mean,
potentially.
I think it's pretty clear why they wanted to keep
Right.
Anderson in that role, and I do understand the rationale.
All right. So now we'll wait to see what happens with Sayamalo, see whether or not how they attack that, because they have had success with Anderson on the field in that or every time they've used a jump, or not every time, but most of the time they've had some success when using that jumbo package.
Yeah, it has been wildly successful. It's been a great wrinkle to this offense. And so I think that the fact they wanted to do all of those hoops of having Pete come in and then Pete stay out for the extra snap kind of speaks to how much they wanted Anderson to remain in that role. And obviously had to get away from it in the second half, being down in this game, but very much a part of this big power run game.
All right, Mike Tomlin on Aaron Rodgers.
No long-term concerns. It was kind of a back and forth there about Rodgers and the view. I'm not even sure exactly what the question was intended to mean. I mean, I think, Rodgers played a bad game, but I'm not seeing anything that would say, long-term, Rodgers obviously has to play well against the Bengals to help calm any concerns about his play and where it's going. He had a terrible game against the Chargers, but Tomlin did not want to chalk it up to an off night, but did not want to say there's any sort of long-term concern about his play either.
Well, the whole attack of that along of the questioning is they basically wanted Mike Tomlin to come out and say Aaron Rodgers played like shit,
Mhm.
and coming off of his rebuttal the other night after the game, just saying, "What do you think?" When asked about how Aaron Rodgers played, there were some concerning moments with Aaron Rodgers. You know, some people are saying that we should use the verb or adjective scared. Okay, well, I think I called it skittish. I think you called it timid. If you want to use scared, I suppose it in a word, it's the same thing there. There were instances in this game where he did not look comfortable with getting hit.
Yeah, I think it's been pretty clear, not just in this game. I think throughout the season, he's shown a little bit of happy feet in the pocket and somebody quick to the check down and has dropped his eyes and tried to, kind of felt the rush, sometimes perceived, sometimes not. So I think that's been true before this game.
All right. I mean, how concerned are you coming off of this game?
About Rodgers
Yeah.
specifically, not, I don't have keep me awake at night kind of concern about Rodgers. He needs to bounce back and kind of quiet any concerns and show he can go back to regular form. But I'll chalk it up to the off night, even if Tomlin won't.
All right. He also mentioned something along the lines about most teams don't pressure Aaron.
Which I'm sure the numbers bear out. I think you talked about that. You're not going to blitz Rodgers because he can beat the blitz still pretty effectively and, play coverage and tighten up those windows. Either the Chargers had a good game plan. My concern for the Chargers was they take away the quick perimeter pass game well. They defend the screen game, the RPO game well. They make you throw downfield, and Pittsburgh has struggled to hit those big downfield plays.
What do you think about what Bud Dupree did on those couple of plays?
Yeah, Dupree felt like he had the Steelers playbook, like he never left. He was dropping into coverage on 2 occasions to take away Rodgers' quick throws. One was that kind of hot throw to Metcalf down there at the 10-yard line that ended up leading to that turnover on downs. One was a play action boot to the right where you went at Johnny Smith kind of fast to the flat and Dupree drops out. That's probably coverage wise. I think that was not Dupree kind of going rogue. The first play, that hot to Metcalf, kind of felt like Dupree just sensed something, caught a signal that kind of told him that Rodgers is going to try to throw this ball. So, yeah, Dupree certainly making an impact in this game in coverage.
Absolutely.
Uh,
What else?
Anything else? I mean, what is your concern level with Rodgers, if any, Dave?
My concern is just the offense in general and the ability, once again, to the run game. there were a couple runs here where and how many times have we said that this year? Man, it almost broke. There was one over to the left side by Jaylen Warren, I think maybe his longest run of the game, where, and I think the Chargers handled that well with kind of a crack replace situation by the outside corner, making sure he stayed outside and forcing that inside and getting a hand on Warren there. Too many times, though, we're saying, man, just one little assignment away from busting them. But how many times can you keep saying that? So my concerns are with this offense in general, not just Aaron Rodgers. My concern is can we see this run game take that definitive step forward and keep it consistently going forward? And the other aspect here is, they are creating opportunities for explosive plays, but not enough of them, and they definitely are not hitting enough of them when they have the opportunity to hit them. Now, look, the interception over the middle was by Aaron Rodgers was a forced football, had no business being thrown, and that's why that was picked there. The other one, I think maybe, is it time to have a more detailed conversation about Roman Wilson versus Calvin Austin in 2 wide receiver packages?
Yeah, I think there's a conversation to be had there. But just to go back to the run game, do we know what was Jaylen Warren's run success rate against the Chargers? Do we have that information? Can we cobble that together?
I can probably, let me see. I can probably
Because
start efforting it here.
it's 54% for the season, which is a career high. I think they've run the ball. They've not hit the explosive plays, which they need to. That's the next step. But they're generally staying on schedule. They're not falling behind. There isn't a ton of negativity here. The success rates are good for the running backs. Warren 54%, Gainwell is at almost 60%. A lot from that Minnesota game still. I think it's kind of some residual there. So there's things to do, and yeah, you can always look at a run scheme and say if you do this extra, hold this block an extra split second, or have your technique be a bit better, then you could really bust a big run. But to me, the pass game was the issue. You had wide open receivers. Rodgers was missing. You had some bad mistakes. The pass protection was a little shaky. Receivers had a hard time getting open. I mean, to me, my concern is squarely on the pass game from this Chargers outing, not the run game.
All right, as far as success rate from a percent of plays with expected points added, I have that from the game against the Chargers, and that was 43%.
Okay, I was looking for the traditional definition of 4 yards on first down.
I don't have that.
Okay.
Take a while to cobble that together.
I felt like they were on schedule. I felt like run game was not the issue that was keeping Pittsburgh off schedule in this game.
Okay.
So
It's still, the run game needs to be better, though, more consistent.
It can be, but is your concern from this game more about the pass game or more about the run game? Because it felt like you were saying the run game was more the primary concern.
Well, I mean, obviously, look, you're not converting third downs, right? So a lot of that falls on the pass game.
But it was your concern, was the bigger concern of this game the run game or the pass game?
Obviously the pass, because I mean you have the opportunity to nail the explosive plays down the field, and you didn't on 3 of those. And then even if you look at one of the forgotten ones within that is when Aaron's pushed out pressure out to his left side, and he forced that one. I think it was Roman. Was it Roman that he forced it to? That was diving. That you kind of wonder if that would picked off. If you looked at that, you have Gainwell breaking free, going upfield on an extended play where and the deep safety has his back turned at the time. The much better decision, instead of forcing out to Roman, what would have been to try to put that over the top to Gainwell. So maybe you can look at that if you got the full all-22 reel.
Yeah, I can pull it up.
Pulled up on that one. I believe it was.
Well, it was right before the end of the half. It was one of the
41 on the timeline, 41 minutes on the timeline of the full reel.
Yeah, I see the step there. I mean, it's not going to be, I think the DB's in decent position, kind of trailing right underneath that hip there. I mean, it's end of the half. I think Rodgers trying to make a play. There's low risk area, throw an interception. The half's basically over at that point, trying to get in range.
Gainwell's got the mailbox flag up. And if you look at the deep safety on that side, he is turned towards the middle of the field, and he's a good 19 yards away at that point. I mean, if Rodgers, when he's cocked ready to load, if he throws that up over the top there, I like the percentages of that a little bit better maybe than the throw he made to Roman.
Yeah, I mean, maybe so. I mean, Henley's covering him. He's got good catch-up speed, trying to squeeze that ball along the sideline to a non-receiver, even if it is Gainwell, who's a talented receiving running back. I don't know. I think of all the throws Rodgers made, I got like a half dozen that I think I have more qualms with than that one.
Sure.
But yeah, I get your point.
Right. The three other misses obviously rank way higher, but
yeah, so success rate for the running game, I think, has been better, but you are looking for those big runs because they have not had the big runs this year, and that's part of what this offense was supposed to do. Rodgers supposed to help be able to lighten the box and be a downfield threat and soften up things in the run game, and it's just not happening.
All right. What about the two differences on the same play between Austin and Roman Wilson?
Yeah, I mean, I think to go to your question about Austin versus Wilson, I really want to see what their snap count split is in this game. It was a bad game for Austin. There's no question about that. The worst he's had this season, maybe of his career by far, but it's poetic in all the wrong ways that for Austin to have his drop interception and then Roman Wilson to score his touchdown on the same exact concept. So whenever, the Austin mistake is bad enough, but whenever you can kind of juxtapose that with Wilson scoring. Granted, that was in garbage time. I think the Chargers kind of played it wrong, but still, Wilson scored. Austin, ball through his hands, interception the other way, kind of highlights his mistake all the more. And so I really want to see, does Wilson get more involved? Does he start eating into Austin snaps? The only kind of silver lining for Austin is right after the interception off his drop, Rodgers went back to him on the very first pass after that, their ensuing possession. And so Rodgers, at least in that moment, showing I'm going to go back to you, which has kind of been his ethos throughout the season. So we'll see. But I think Austin's mistake is highlighted even more by Wilson capitalizing on that same exact concept late in the game.
All right.
Who should be the number two? These guys will rotate and split a little bit, but who should be your de facto starter?
I think you need to really explore giving Roman more snaps, whatever that looks like. I mean,
I think
it's not going to be a definitive one on the sideline. They're going to continue to split snaps, but now's the time. If you have confidence in Roman Wilson and him carrying out his responsibilities, it's time to start maybe giving him the lion's share, I think.
I think that's fair. I think we'll see what it looks like this week, but I would not be surprised if there was a noticeable increase in Wilson's snaps. He's been under 30 since that Bengals game. I think since Calvin came back, he's been under that 30 snap mark per game. Let me just double check it here, assuming that everything is loading properly. Yeah, only 18 snaps against the Chargers, 29 the previous 2 weeks after playing a career-high 33 versus the Bengals. So I'll ask it bluntly, and I know the number of plays will impact things, but how many snaps for Roman Wilson? Will it be over under 25 this weekend?
Yeah, tell me how many snaps on offense they're going to play.
I'll give you a 60. I'll say they hit 60 for the second time this season.
And you say over under 25, I'll take the under.
You'll take the under. I'll take the over.
Okay.
I think 30 might be the question. Will he get to half the snaps?
When and if MVS dresses for a game, what does that look like?
From a snap count perspective,
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see. I would probably guess around 10, 12 snaps, probably one or two deep ball targets. So that's kind of my expectation. It's not going to be a lot of snaps, but about a dozen.
Mostly an 11 personnel or empty?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't know what his background is. He's got some size to him. I don't know exactly where he comes in as a blocker, but yeah, probably 11 personnel.
Yeah, I had 10 snaps in my head.
Okay, so roughly. We're about the same. And again, it depends on how many snaps in total Pittsburgh has, which has been, unfortunately, historically low. All right, Dave, anything else from the press conference from Tomlin? I think we kind of covered his comments pretty good.
Yeah, I think.
All right, let's talk about, we already are kind of doing it, but the All-22 from this Chargers game will stick with the Steelers offense. As much as I ragged on Rodgers for a bad game, and there's no excuse if he just makes those routine throws. Pittsburgh is very much in this game. I don't know if they win it, but it's going to be a close, competitive game. Receivers were having a tough time getting open. I mean, there was not a lot there for Rodgers outside of the throws he missed, which I know is a very much how was the rest of the play, Mrs. Lincoln's statement, but you can talk about both. Rodgers was bad, but there was not a lot of open receivers.
Right. Outside of the early slant window throw to DK Metcalf, kind of I think a couple of the mirrored concepts. One of them, obviously when they were running the two wide receivers and running one behind the other to get a rub off there, those were effective. Obviously on the scramble drill to DK Metcalf, that could have been had on that one. The Johnny Smith one is the less forgiving out of all the misses there in this game. That is one that you absolutely no excuse whatsoever of missing that one, and that very well could have ended up in the end zone. At the very least, you're down low, deep low in the red zone. So that was a huge miss. If you're going to rank them as far as forgivability, I think it goes the most forgivable one might be the one to Austin down the right side. Even so, you'd like to see that ball put out in front and give Austin the higher probability of getting that one. The second forgivable would have been on the deep one to DK Metcalf early in the game, where you kind of wonder
Who do you blame for that? Yeah, well, it's a good discussion.
It's tough because of the angle that Metcalf feels that he's got to get his separation on, and Rodgers on the run of thinking that he's going to be able to run. It's hard to say. I'm interested to hear Aaron's comment on it. Second comment on it again, and then maybe DK when he talks about what he was kind of thinking his role. It's real hard to address blame in a extended play situation there, but because of the angle, I feel I'm more in line of Metcalf doing what he was supposed to give himself the better angle, the more separation on that.
Yeah, I'm not looking to really rank forgiveness for plays. A lot of them just simply weren't made, and I set the bar high for guys like Rodgers and Metcalf, but I can give some grace to that particular moment a lot more than others because Rodgers had to roll left and had to kind of change his launch point and kind of throw more far hash than what was intended. The aiming point of the route for Metcalf was more shallow than what Rodgers wanted. Rodgers kind of wanted Metcalf to drift upfield and kind of towards the pylon. So yeah, that's a tough play, but these are plays you expect those guys to make. Those are two prominent players. Yeah, you're a Hall of Fame quarterback and a $150 million receiver. You're looking for those big plays. You need them. Those are supposed to be the guys that make them, and you didn't. So tough play. It's not like that was a layup. Rodgers had a lot more egregious misses than that one, and I won't put all the blame on him. But that's a play where these guys got to make them because they're supposed to be the guys that make those type of plays.
Right. It kind of goes back to about the rest of the game with DK. The Chargers obviously paid DK a lot of attention in this, and Mike Tomlin, in a word, said the other guys just got to do a better job of getting open. And for the most part during this game, they did not.
I got to look into it more specifically. It just kind of was a thought in my head as I was watching the whole team through the All-22. I didn't like how much Metcalf was isolated, backside X receiver. I know that's kind of his primary role, but whenever you do that, it made it easier for the Chargers to double him and take him away. I know they did use Metcalf in the slot some, and they did move him around a little bit, but I think overall we had to do more to make him in some of those stacks and bunches and put him on the trip side, make it a little bit harder, not for him to find, but just to kind of be able to isolate and take him away. I know that sometimes when you isolate the backside X receiver and it's clear they're doubling him, you kind of have to declare that as a coverage. It makes that front side picture easier. The fourth down fade ball, good example of that. Clearly they were doubling Metcalf on that play. Bad decision by Rodgers to still throw it. But I think for Metcalf to get open, I didn't like isolating him so much because it kind of made the Chargers coverage easier to take him away.
Right. And look, you've got to have a better plan down low when he is doubled in that situation.
When you say plan, is that an Arthur Smith thing or an Aaron Rodgers thing?
I think Arthur Smith thing.
I think on that fourth down, Rodgers just can't throw that ball. There was a plan. I think you had a decent route concept on that trip side.
But
Rodgers just can't
Fryman's
throw
not
it.
going to score on that, I don't think.
Well, I want him to pick up the first down. He doesn't have to score. He just has to move the chains, and I think he's got a chance to do so. I mean, guys aren't getting open, but that's not an
Right.
Arthur Smith thing. I think he had a concept to try to get guys open. It was a bunch trying to kind of have some switch routes off the line. I mean, it's not like it was super static. The call wasn't bad. I think Rodgers made just a
Predetermined.
terrible decision. Yeah, just totally predetermined. I'm trying to throw it up to Metcalf, and you just can't do that. Give somebody else a chance to make a play.
Right.
The spacing felt pretty bad, and some of that might be Arthur Smith. Some of that might just be the players. You had some weird stuff of guys kind of bunched up and sitting down in very similar spots, and kind of some routes that felt like they should be over the ball weren't. I don't know. There was some weird stuff there. There were some bad calls by Arthur Smith. I think none worse than that 3rd and 2 call he had that came out on that Warren whenever he was on the sideline we mentioned earlier, where you had nothing over the middle. It was kind of this slant, flat combination. It just, I don't know, it was really nothing to put the defense in conflict. There was nothing between the hashes at all for our Aaron Rodgers, and Rodgers got sacked. So that was a pretty bad play call.
All right.
Other thoughts here, the offensive line. I thought pass protection could have been better, but I mean, that Chargers rush is pretty stout. I didn't think the line was that terrible. I thought they did a decent job.
Yeah, I would leave it at that, though. The ball out so quick, mostly with Rodgers,
It was longer in this game. It was 2.6 in this game, which is for him a pretty long snap to throw time. I thought Zach Frazier played well. His grip strength, his anchor was really impressive. Some of those big D tackles the Chargers have, Caldwell and others, I thought he was holding up really well and not letting the pocket get collapsed.
All right.
I thought Jones.
But missing the downfield throws was and obviously it's a chicken and egg type thing here, but played a huge part in Aaron Rodgers' off night, because you hit a couple of those, it changes the complexion, I think, of this game. That and the 4th down play.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, even the big plays aside, if you didn't hit any of those, which you didn't, but even if you hit the Jonnu Smith one, even if you hit the 4th down play, you threw the ball somewhere else, even if you hit Gainwell in that 3rd down before the 4th down play underneath. I mean, if you just hit those more routine plays, you're going to put up some points. I don't think Pittsburgh still wins that game with just those plays added to their sheet, but you're putting yourself in position to score. So to me, Rodgers just missed routine throws. If he just gets back to doing things he's done for 99% of his career, then Pittsburgh will move this offense in at least a more meaningful way.
And then backing it up even further, let's admit it, this was a 40-play offensive game for the Steelers, right?
Right, because the last 10 plays, especially the last 8 on that last drive, the game was over. So 40 plays is just brutal. You just don't have the ball. I mean, I don't care what offense you are. You're just not going to put up points, not score a lot with such a small number of plays.
And then within that 40, 9 were 3rd downs you did not convert, obviously. One of them was a sack safety. 2 were interceptions. 1 Aaron Rodgers' fault, 1 Austin's fault. We're whittling them down here. And then you have 3 missed explosive plays down the field.
Yeah, and a partridge in a pear tree and a mess, and 10 points in total in this game. So, yeah, Pittsburgh the last 2 weeks, 7 of 26 on 3rd down. And their average 3rd down yardage needed is only about 6.2 yards, which is about average in the NFL. So they're in manageable moments. They were just not converting.
All
right, defensively, Dave, what are your thoughts on this defense?
I thought mostly obviously up until the tires came off, the defense played well. I mean, anytime that you're holding an offense like that in a running game, even though they did not, obviously have their top dogs in their top 2 running backs and all, I thought for the most part, from a pressure standpoint, they did well. And once again, I thought Herbert played well overall against the blitz, but I thought in a handful of times that they did blitz, I thought it was fairly effective in getting pressure. I thought you really started to see the pressure and the hits start coming to light in the second quarter against Herbert there. I do think that the Chargers started making a more decisive plan to get the ball out from Herbert's hand quicker once that pressure started to add up on him. And as we talked about, Herbert ended up with a career low of time to throw and all. The the wheels, the attrition of the amount of plays played, probably combined, and I think we got an email somewhere in here about traveling out to the West Coast, and it all just started to wear on the defense later on, and that's when you started to see their running game get a little bit of attraction there, and then obviously the easy touchdown to McConkey, and then the completed big almost triple explosive play to McConkey was really kind of the final hammer swing against them.
Yeah, I think attrition's a good word. Pittsburgh's run defense was solid for the first half, started wearing down in the third quarter. Still not a bad performance, all things considered, but didn't get some of the splash there. Just a missed opportunity. She had the dropped interception by Joey Porter. That's a gift. You got to make that play. The Duggar one, I look back at it, it was probably a better chance than I initially thought for Duggar to make that catch. Still tough. I think it's a little. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a tough play. I mean, it's definitely wow, what a play. But once again, how many of those chances are you going to get in games?
Yeah, it's sort of. Again, I'll go back to the word poetic. The Chargers caught their interception that was kind of thrown to them. That was R.J. Mickens on the overthrow by Rodgers. Pittsburgh dropped theirs, and then the Chargers' other interception came off a tip pass off of Calvin Austin. The Steelers dropped the interception that was thrown into their hands by Porter and dropped, although drop's a little more looser term here, the tip pass for Kyle Duggar. Now, the Austin tip pass was an easier catch to make for Dante Jackson. It wasn't like on the ground. But point is, the Chargers caught their chances, the one that was thrown to them and the one that was tipped, and Pittsburgh dropped the one that was thrown to them and couldn't catch the one that was tipped, and that kind of sums up the splash play element of the game.
Yeah, I mean, look, you got this thing into the fourth quarter, although your offense isn't handling their part, you're giving up 15 points at that point.
Is that even counting the safety?
What's that?
Are you counting the safety in the 15 points?
I mean, yeah, I guess, 13.
13, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because the 2 points was an own goal by Aaron Rodgers, which, what a bad play that was. That kind of sums it up. I thought in that play, it's third down. I think it was third down. You got Frymouth on the slant.
And he's skittish in that one, too, because his eyes drop. He's more concerned about how the hell am I going to get out of this instead of trying to make a play.
Yeah, he does kind of look to drop his eyes and want to start bailing and start trying to run around a little too quickly. On that one, Frymouth on the slants, it's going to be a tight throw. I think you got to give your guy a chance. Frymouth's got good hands. Cornerback's off a little bit. And then once Rodgers comes off that first read, eyes drop, looking around, not looking at downfield at all. Runs into Fauton. I think that's why he fumbled, and then Matt tags him. So, yeah, that was another really, really bad play. Yeah, the defense, I mean, it's hard to be mad about their performance. There were things left on the table. There were things to improve upon. The lack of interceptions was obviously notable, but, I mean, you held this defense in check. And for those who say Pittsburgh has to get turnovers to play well, they didn't get turnovers, which was a demerit, but I thought they still played pretty well overall.
Right. 6 of 17 on third down, and this once again was one of the better third down offenses coming into this game.
They were number one.
Right.
I thought Benton had a good game. I thought I was really impressed by Benton stacking good games. His hand usage, his bend through contact, getting pressure. Obviously had the sack. I think he's putting together some really nice games. Run defense was good too.
Yeah, he stacked a couple of nice ones together. I thought Hayward, for the most part, played a good game up front.
What are your thoughts on Harmon?
Definitely did not jump out on tape as much as Benton did.
Yeah, I thought the run defense was okay. The pass rush has not really been impactful from Harmon. It's not been bad. He's gotten some power. I think his bull's a bit better. He's kind of pushing the pocket, but he's not able to shed, not able to make some of these plays. And, my thought on Harmon whenever they drafted him was he could be a really great run stopper and a good pass rusher, not a great pass rusher. And I'm still kind of in that camp.
Look, this defense as a whole held Herbert and that offense below a 6.0 adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat, and even without getting interceptions, which factor into that. So anytime you do that against an offense that has the weapons of Keenan Allen and McConkey and Johnston, and obviously Gadsden, who went out, halfway through the game and all like that. I mean, you've done a fairly good job, and heck, you held them until Vidal started really once again, you could cherry pick this to death. How many yards did Vidal have in the fourth quarter on runs?
I felt like a lot of third quarter traction he was getting too. I'm not sure. I can try to
Right.
look it up. Give me a second. Just to go back to Harmon, he had 4 quarterback hits in his first 3 games. He's not had a quarterback hit since week 6. He's gone 4
Okay.
games without one, and there's been some chances to do so, some pass rush opportunities. So just kind of speaks to a guy that I'm looking to take that next step as a pass rush. I think the run defense has been pretty good. The pass rush has been a little more to be desired.
Yep.
Probably need a second on Vidal. How many yards did Vidal rush for in
90
total?
something, I think.
Yeah. So a lot of that. So the Pittsburgh was trying to play too high later in this game, maybe to stop some of the man coverage issues. And I think so the Chargers started getting some decent runs off those too high looks. Probably will need a second here to try to find out the number of yards in this one. I'll try to do it, but I'll do by second half and then by fourth quarter in particular
Okay.
to kind of see. Because I think first half, what did he have first half? It wasn't much. I know you always tweet out the quarterly and halftime stats. I mean, he was pretty much bottled up at the half.
Yeah, let me see if I've got the halftime summaries here. Vidal had 49 yards rushing, I guess, in the first half. So he did a little bit better than what
Yeah, I thought.
what I remember in my head. So he averaged 6.1 yards per carry, which helped probably keep them on schedule a lot more in the first half than I originally thought.
Me too. I got him for 46 yards in the second half, 22 in the fourth quarter. Now, granted, he had a couple of those carries, I think, late in the game. Did have the final first down, but there were a couple of late game runs. Pittsburgh was in its true 4-down front, 4 defensive linemen front. But Vidal, it took him a bit to get going. The run defense played well, largely in this game, under 4 yards per carry. The Chargers were. Herbert only got him once on the scramble. If you could replicate that performance each game of the rest of the season, I don't know if you sign up for that, but it's not going to kill you.
And I think the overall thing, despite the fact that Vidal had, let's see, he had 13 receiving yards in the first half and 49. So he had 62 total yards of offense in the first half for him. I think the thing that sticks out the most as far as the defense success goes was the Chargers were 2 of 8 on third down, just 25%. So the Steelers were actually worse in the second half on third downs.
Yeah. The only thing that killed you in this game defensively was McConkey and man
Mhm.
coverage. Just beating you, and Eccles took the blame, and he had a bad game. The 58-yarder, the touchdown. And not to hand wave those plays away because they're so important, but that was kind of like you can isolate where the Chargers won. It was in those moments.
It was a good plan overall, but obviously didn't do enough later in the game. They wore down later in the game,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
specifically against McConkey and those key situations.
You got it. All right. Any other thoughts here, Dave? Ramsey, I thought played well. I've been really happy about his transition to free safety.
Mm-hmm.
And then Eccles, he's going to play a whole lot better if they're going to play man coverage against the Bengals this weekend.
Right. Oh, one thing we forgot to talk about, James Pierre.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we already had hit on that. We thought he had played a nice game coming off the bench and all like that. Mike Tomlin had some super positive things to say about James Pierre.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that story that Tomlin shared. I think he does like the opportunity to talk about some of these players and the job Pierre's done, watching his whole maturation, former undrafted free agent. Tomlin talking about a COVID guy. He didn't meet James Pierre until training camp that year because everything was shut down in the spring that year. And to see his development, and says James is always game. I mean, made the point that no player since 2020, no Steelers played in more games than James Pierre, which is a great stat of the weird for you there. He's played in almost, I think, 90 games this over that span. So Pierre's having a good season, had a really good game, and it's probably one reason why they're more comfortable keeping Ramsey at corner because Pierre's stepping up and playing some good football.
You mean Ramsey at safety?
Oh, sorry, Ramsey at safety. I'm getting my thoughts mixed up. Yeah,
All
Ramsey at
right.
safety.
Pat Freiermuth. Why is he so good against the Bengals?
A zone beater. That's what Tomlin said. He's Bengals played a lot of zone under Lou Anarumo, played a lot of cover 2 in the past, and then Al Golden in this game. And so Freiermuth's a guy who can get open versus zone, says Tomlin.
All right. Now
All
I
right.
think we have it by its tail.
And then special teams, yeah, the muff there by Williams, a couple okay returns by Sermon and Williams. Owen Wilson, I thought, did a nice job as a gunner, but that's all I kind of got there.
Right. Obviously, the missed field goal by Boswell is something you don't expect to see.
Right. And missed opportunities across the board. All right, Dave, anything else that we're missing? Any other late breaking information?
I think we've got it there. We can get to some emails here.
All right, and let's close out today's show. And AB, by the way, pled not guilty to the attempted murder charge. So we won't talk about that a whole lot as the court system, I'm sure, starts to bog down, but that is the latest on AB.
All right, Bill Ewan from Columbus, chronically optimistic. We are back to the doom and gloom part of the season, but I probably stand alone in the optimistic category. This has been the most up and down season I can ever remember, but all the pieces are there to win the division and get a playoff win, he says. This team is a good team and can beat anyone it faces if every facet plays decent to good, which they have done at points throughout the year. The defense looks like it has figured out how to be decent, and I think that is the new floor. When they get turnovers, they are great. The offense has been decent to good every game except for Sunday, and that really came down to Rodgers stinking, and every other part was at least decent, minus the Austin catch. He has shown us 8 games of decent to good play, so I'll chalk that up to a blip. Special teams has been great except for Sunday, but Boz got his bi-decade miss out of the way, and I feel confident we won't muff any more punts. So I feel confident that we will see this team level out to decent play being the floor, and we won't have any more blowouts. And if all phases can be decent, boy, how many times does he use decent in here? Or better, or if we have a shot against anyone. We won't win them all, but I think we have a strong finish and have a real shot at a win in the postseason. So my question is, am I crazy? Bill, all I will say is you have a lot of decent and a lot of ifs in there, and that's the most concerning thing about all this, I think, at this point here.
I mean, I will take a dash of optimism and a sea of everything sucks and the sky is falling, and we're very much, fickle and prisoners of the moment. Pittsburgh, though, has been a very inconsistent team, even more so this year than past years. So, yeah, I don't want to sit there and say, this thing's done. It's not curtains. Pittsburgh still is leading the division. So we get to have a big game against the Bengals, and it's a bad defense, and maybe Pittsburgh can find some magic that way. So, yeah, this thing can bounce back and forth, which is basically what's happened throughout the entire season.
I am less optimistic than you are at this point right now, and I'm certainly not chronically optimistic. This team's got some tough games coming up here. 2 against the Ravens, 1 against the Bengals, the Lions, the Bills. Being decent as the new floor. We talked the other day. How does this team get 5 more wins?
Understood, but there's tough games, but Pittsburgh's beaten the top 2 teams in the AFC this year, have they not? The Colts and the Patriots. So they've beaten some tough teams this season.
All right, that's Bill's optimism there. Ron writes in, it's time for a change. Hi, David Knox. I know there's 0 chance of Tomlin ever leaving the Steelers unless he himself decides to hang it up, but I have a hypothetical question for you. Assuming the Steelers fail to make and win a playoff game, would you trade Mike Tomlin and his staff to the Giants for their first-round pick? Second question, what's more likely? Steelers hold on to first place and win the division, or Steelers fall all the way to third place in the AFC North? I had a feeling we're going to get a couple of questions because it seems like the local and the national narrative or topic of du jour, I guess, feels like it's starting a few weeks earlier this year. Normally it feels, I might be wrong. I mean, that's obviously
No, you're right. You're right.
certain part of the fan base that wants to talk about this all part of any part of the year. We got to see how this thing. I will say this. You can put me on record of this when it comes to Mike Tomlin and a possible trade and all like that. The only way I think this does become a bigger part of the discussion is A, if this team does not make the playoffs, or B, this team makes the playoffs and obviously for whatever reason does not win a first round playoff game, and specifically if they not even close in a wild card game or whatever first round game that they have. Because it becomes, if there was ever an opportunity to reset, that would be the time. Draft in Pittsburgh, get a new coaching head coach come in, the whole making a legitimate run at drafting a first round quarterback by trading up or whatever means necessary. Just the dynamics of the near perfect time to reset everything would be that would potentially be the time. Now, you just can't push a button and trade Mike Tomlin away. And would you indeed get a first round draft pick or 2 first round, whatever? It's such a hypothetical. I would just go on record and say that the timing and the consideration of the whole thing becomes more conversational, I think, if this team fails to make the playoffs or gets into the playoffs and just is not even close in a game.
This is one of my least favorite topics because, as you talked about, it comes up every single season, including last year and all the years before, where we have usually it's Florio driving this bus. I think it's a little less him this time. It's more Giants media. I think it was some piece in The Athletic, maybe from a Giants guy, that talked about it. Trading Tomlin, trading head coaches, which is so rare. I always give the stat. I'll do it again this year, I suppose. That the last coaches who have been traded that weren't semi-retired or out of football, that were actively coaching a team, so not including Bruce Arians and Sean Payton, was Herm Edwards and Tony Dungy, basically 2 decades ago. I think Edwards was a contract dispute, not even a it's time kind of discussion. I think Dungy might have been a better example of that. So this stuff is super, super rare. It's always more bark than bite. I'm in the middle of the season. I'm thinking about that kind of stuff right now. I don't expect it to happen. I get the ties between the Mara and the Rooney family, and if the Giants are waiting to hire a head coach, if the Seals make the playoffs, the Giants don't want to sit there and wait around to see when will Pittsburgh exit and when could Tomlin be available. I mean, it's all just kind of fodder for me, and I generally loathe this topic because it's always discussed and nothing ever comes about. So we'll look at things whenever the season ends. We'll see what the dust has settled and what it looks like, and kind of go from there. But this is always a topic that gets talked about, like you said, usually a little bit later in the year, usually more December, January discussion. I'm sure it'll come up again later in the season, but that's one of my least favorite topics.
If there was ever a time to do it, with the scenario of not making the playoffs or getting, essentially, no chance in the playoffs, the draft in Pittsburgh, all the things I laid out.
I don't think the draft in Pittsburgh has anything to do with anything in terms of a trade of Tomlin.
Throw that out then.
I think you could sit there and say the Giants and Steelers relationship and the ties, like I said, between the Mara and Rooney family, which goes back to their foundations in the 20s and the 30s for the Steelers, makes that a little more interesting, at least of a storyline than maybe some other ones in the past, in terms of opening up lines of communication and those types of things, instead of kind of just being a team out of the blue cold calling like I think the Bears did last year. And also just a point of procedure, whenever you trade a coach, you don't trade the staff. The staff does not paste over to the new team. Tomlin could go hire maybe some of that staff potentially, but it's not like you're trading the coaching staff. You're trading a coach. You're trading just the head coach in those moments where it's happened.
All right. What's more likely to happen? The Steelers hold on to first place and win the division, or the Steelers fall all the way to third place in the AFC North?
It's an interesting question. I'll still say first place. I think Pittsburgh has done well against Baltimore. They seem to rise up. It's hard to see them fall to third place, and the Bengals are 3-6, and the defense is just the worst, one of the worst in football.
How much will your opinion change if they lose to the Bengals on Sunday?
Well, yeah, at that point, I think it becomes easier if you're now probably out of first place or tied for first place, and the Bengals are right behind you. I'd probably go the other way, I guess, if they lose to the Bengals this weekend, in terms of what is more likely.
Right. As we sit here right now, what's your confidence level of them beating the Bengals as we sit here on a Wednesday before having to make our prediction on Friday?
Well, my predictions are, I'm going to do what is it? some Seinfeld, George, the opposite, just do the opposite, whatever my prediction is, and just go the other way, because it will be a whole lot more effective. I am probably irrationally confident that Pittsburgh will win this game, but I have not really settled my feelings on this outcome yet.
All right, I'm less rationally confident than you are, but
that concerns me even more.
to answer his question, as we sit here today, I would say it's more likely they hold on to first place than finish third.
Okay. And if they lose to the Bengals this weekend, you'll flip that opinion, I assume?
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
Let's see here. Ryan from Tulsa, in my experience, you're a bad team, badly coached team when every week you have to adjust or fix something different from the week before. When we lost to the Bengals and the Packers, the defense they assembled was atrocious despite being so highly paid, and they adjust, and the offense is now inept. You can't fix anything in capital letters when the problem changes every week and has been a troubling trend. If you could have a cup of coffee with Con and Tomlin, what would you say is the team's biggest problem besides them, and how would you fix it? Because we know Tomlin and Con aren't going anywhere. Jeez. I will just say that I will say this. I think they have been worse on both sides of the football than I anticipated this team being this year. And in no way, shape, or form did I think this was a Super Bowl caliber team. But I will tell you, look, it does seem like there's things every week that you're chasing that. What's that game where you hit the hammer, the thing pops out, and you
Whack-a-mole?
yeah, the whack-a-mole type situation here. Um,
Not sure if it's a hammer. I'm not sure
okay.
what alley carnival style games you're playing over there, Dave.
What
It's a
did I
mallet.
a mallet? What did I say
Mallet.
it was?
A hammer.
Okay, a mallet hammer. All right. Uh, been a while since I've been to Chuck E. Cheese, unlike
That's
you.
it's my frequent stop. Go there for lunch
Uh,
every day.
if you could have a cup of coffee with Con and Tomlin, what would you say is the team's biggest problem?
I don't
There's a bunch of them.
Consistency, which is a very broad base. It's not necessarily an actionable, of course you want to become more consistent, and saying that does not make you become more consistent, but they're a very hot and cold team, even more so than other years. It's been very hard to predict what kind of team you're going to get on a given week, and it's hard to have any sort of stability whenever you are so up and down.
Man, I want to see this running game get better traction. I want to see this running game get better traction, period.
I think it can be better. I think the pass game is a much bigger concern. I think the lack of those downfield explosive pass plays of 20+ yards is a bigger concern than the run game, which I think has generally had some traction. Bourne has been your best player on offense, probably maybe for the entire season, but right up there with Rodgers. Rodgers had a bad game, but he's been very good on the whole this season. To the first point about it seems like Pittsburgh is always having to fix something. I think that's true of any team that comes off a loss. I don't know how many teams come off a loss and say, all right, it's all good, let's run it back. I mean, I think if you're a fan of any other team, you're having the same discussions whenever your team loses a game. So the whole point about needing to fix something doesn't do much for me, because I think that's pretty much how every team operates, as they should.
What about the Packers? What are they thinking after their defense playing so well against the Eagles?
Well, they're saying we got to fix the offense.
Right,
their defense may be fine, but they got to say we got to fix the offense. We got to be able to get more than, our defense did a great job. They've lost 3 games in which they've allowed 13 or fewer points this season. How is their offense, which has a lot of talent, even though it has some injuries, how is it not producing? So like I said, take any team that loses a game, you're having the same conversations and the same podcasts and the same message boards and forums, and sitting there saying, how do we fix X, Y, and Z?
All right, Nate Weems. We'll roll through some of these real quick here. On Monday's show, Dave said skittish. Alex said uncomfortable. Let's call it what it was. Rodgers looked straight up scared. I'm not saying he's the main problem with this team, because he's been solid. And as far as problems with this team, he's down around 7 or 8. But you can't play quarterback scared. The predictability, inconsistency, lack of three-phase football has gotten truly exhausting. I've officially moved from keep Tomlin to keep Tomlin but replace coordinators, to not saying fire him, but I'm okay if he's gone, and getting dangerously close to I'll help him pack. Get ready to be fighting for a playoff spot come weeks 14 to 17. I'll agree with that last point that he made. Get ready for fighting for a playoff spot comes week 14 to 17. And yeah, well, I think we hit on this earlier in the show. Rodgers Rodgers did not look comfortable. At times he looked like he did not want to get hit, and I called it skittish. Alex called it uncomfortable. Call it whatever you want. But Rodgers, uh, that was a bad game for Aaron Rodgers. Period.
Yeah, there's no question about that. I appreciate the scale. I'm trying to get it. So the scale goes, I'm okay with keeping the coach, to change the coordinator, to you can go or take it or leave it, to I'll help you pack. I just like the gamut there, the outline, the picture you're painting. What was the main question in this? Or was it just more of a vent
I think
frustration?
it's just more of a vent. That main problem with this team's been solid. And let's see, predictability, inconsistency, lack of three-phase football has gotten truly exhausting.
I get that. Yeah, it's been like I said, when you're inconsistent, it's a frustrating and emotionally exhausting season because if you're bad, at least teams know, okay, we're bad. If you're good, you can probably have a reasonable expectation of what you're going to get. When you are so up and down, it is kind of more jarring and harder to handle and more confusing. Yeah, it's going to be a dogfight. I mean, certainly Pittsburgh is not coasting into the playoffs. They're going to have to fight. Now, Week 18 game against the Ravens may mean a lot. Hopefully, it'll mean a lot for Pittsburgh if they handle other business. So, yeah, that's not going to be really easy. But again, for Tomlin, I take the whole season in totality. And if we want to be a fan base that talks about the playoffs, the regular season doesn't matter. You can have a good regular season. You got to win the playoffs, and then it's all comes down to it. So we should still judge it that way too. Even a regular season that's bumpy, you get in the wild card game and win a playoff game, then you feel like you've had a good season. So I will judge this thing by the end because that's how we always talk about the Steelers team. What does January look like? And we're still a ways away from there, but obviously a lot of work to do to get to that point.
All right, the final two weekend we've already summed up, but I'll just give the guys a shout out anyway. Russell Mocha from Baltimore and Ramon Angulo Garcia from Mexico, both wanted, Tomlin trade scenarios, and they're worded different ways, but it's the whole same thing that we addressed with the earlier email there. So we sort of by proxy answered both of the questions about the whole Tomlin trade talk that's starting in middle of November, even
And then,
earlier.
yeah, because Dable gets fired, and so obviously the head coaching stuff becomes, and that was, I mean, it's that I don't know who that guy was. I didn't read the article, but wrote that pretty lengthy piece about Tomlin and the Giants, and I get the allure from why the Giants would want to hire him. I mean, I think that makes sense for why they would want to pursue that. Plus, they have their quarterback of the future, so they can be more willing to part with that first round pick. But believe it when I see it, because again, when was the Herm Edwards trade? What year was that? 09?
Oh, I don't remember, Alex.
Let's find out when that was. 2006. So that's the last time a head coach who was actively coaching a team, again, not counting Arians, not counting Sean Payton, who were sidelined whenever they were traded. That's the last time a coaching trade happened. So we talk about it every single year, and it has not happened in 19 years.
All right, there is one final one, but it's so long and it's a lot of data in here. But I'll give Edward Breercheck a shout out here. He's got were the Steelers sleepy after flying to LA last week for work and then watching the Steelers offense look bizarrely flat. I wondered if East Coast teams actually perform worse at night on the West Coast. He pulled some data from NFL Verse and NFL Reader. Schedules to avoid brittle URLs and scrape game time. Key findings late afternoon at Pacific venues. East visitors won 44% of the games of 267 total. Night at Pacific venues. East visitors won 36.8% of the games of 57 total. The difference trends in the expected direction worse at night, but is not statistically significant in this sample. Looking more broadly, including Mountain Time, East visitors in night games went 35 and 49, 40.7% from 2000 to 2025. Caveats, he says, sample size for true night games at Pacific venues is modest 57, which limits power. Kick times at Eastern time that captures the circadian angle. Boy, he's gone deep here. I'll have to forward this to you, Alex, and all. And but I guess his kind of contention is didn't the Steelers weren't helped by being an East Coast team traveling to West Coast and playing at night.
Yeah, I mean, there's some good data that I've read in the past, and that's some really good data there. So it's a tough trip for sure. I know Ernie is typically low with those kind of late Sunday night West Coast trips. That is certainly not something the team has liked, and they've lost a lot of those situations. So that's good information, and obviously proven true by this game. I should correct myself. I think I said earlier Dungy was traded up. I think that's wrong. It was John Gruden that was traded to replace Tony Dungy, something like that. So I just want to correct the record there. But point is, very rare on the head coach trade. I want to ask you one more thing, Dave, not email related. I had the article today about TJ Watt. A lot of offseason talk. Move around. It's going to be a brand new scheme. Going to do a lot of fun things with TJ Watt. It's basically the same old with TJ Watt lining up on the left side. Do you care about that? Is that a good thing, bad thing? What are your thoughts and feelings?
Hey, am I shocked about it? No, he likes rushing from that left side. He just likes doing it. And even though you occasionally would like, it's not in as we said a couple of times back when prior to the season and all like that when all this talk started. It's not the end all do all of everything because you're just going to move. He's just going to get attention on the other side wherever he goes. And if he's he would do it more if he felt there was an advantage that he could get off of this. He obviously likes the way he gets off on the left side of this defense. He obviously feels that he rushes better. He obviously has more reps from the other side. It's not an end all cure all. Am I shocked that he's rarely doing it, switching over to the other side? No, I'm not. Look, you've gotten good play from Alex Highsmith the last couple of games on that other side. Obviously, Herbig can rush from really anywhere. This is not. It's not a difference maker by him 4 or 5 times a game lining up on the other side. End of story.
Same. I was good with it even when Watt and the team wasn't, and they said, we're going to move him. I said, I don't really see the point. He's built a Hall of Fame career from one side. You're going to do some more things to free him up, some more blitzing, some more stunting. I think they are doing those things. I got a clip in the article I wrote about the topic today that showed him on a stunt that should have been a sack, and man coverage just did not hold up in the back end. But it's just kind of funny because it was talked about so much, and they just said, let's just keep it the same. I did think he would move around a bit more in that 3 outside linebacker package. He really hasn't. It's been Herbig on his feet a lot more. I thought they would get a little more creative in those moments because they've been able to use it more with the guys back and healthy. But just wanted to note that because it was so much hand-wringing about that right after the season last year, throughout the entire offseason, and they've just kind of fell back into their old comfortable ways.
I think he just plain outright feels more comfortable on that left side. He does most of his studying, in-depth tackle studying and all like that. I just think he feels a lot more comfortable, feels he's a better player overall. Or else if he thought he could gain any advantage whatsoever in doing it, I think he would even push to do it more.
Sure. No, I think that's exactly right. I think he's comfortable on that side, and that's fine. The numbers show 96.8% of his snaps this year have been a left edge. Last year, 98%. Year before, 97.8%. So a slight change, which was more early in this season. I should have studied it the last 5 or 6 weeks because he's not moved over really at all. They kind of mess with it very early in the season. But just want to note that because we kind of forget about the big offseason topics once the season gets going. This was one of them, and the change has not really happened.
All right. Thank you for all the emails everybody sent. Hopefully this was an entertaining show overall. The Wednesday injury report will be out in a couple hours. Players are starting to filter in and speak to the media. We'll be recapping that. Aaron Rodgers speaks today. We'll be recapping that as well. The coordinators talk on Thursday. The first injury report of week 11 will be out later this afternoon. It should be out early with both these teams being East Coast teams. So we'll see what the status of even Bengals are with like Trey Hendrickson, who I think is doubtful to play, but he did. They missed him the first time around, right? He was inactive.
They did. They'll miss Burrow and Hendrickson in both games this
Right.
year, which not mad about that.
All right. We'll see what Friday has for us. We hope to have our buddy Jay Morrison back on to talk about Steelers Bengals Part 2 on top of it. So You can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions. Sign up. Get a username and password. Hit the login button to use a username and password to take advantage of the ad-free portion of the site. So, until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.